Three, two, one. Hey, everybody, this is Victor. I'm here with my student, Forrest. We're going to be sharing his real estate journey and how far he's come. He's actually closed, bought, purchased his first flip. That's going to be anticipated, a projected 25K net profit. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Well, I'm excited to share this kind of first leg of your journey, this first milestone, because getting your first deal is a big deal. They say the first one's the hardest, and I definitely believe that. So you got that one done, and just wanted to kind of share your story and provide inspiration for others as they're getting started on their own real estate journey. But before we get into the deal, all that good stuff. So what's your background?
So I come from kind of like an AV, audiovisual IT background. I used to work at a college up in New England for a bit. And then just recently, my wife and I decided to move down to Texas, just outside the Dallas area. And since we made a huge change, we decided that we wanted to go about life differently. We gave us the perfect opportunity to start investing, and we decided we wanted to take it. So we dove right into it.
Awesome. Well, before that, how long have you been trying to get into investing, or how long have you been thinking about it?
So not too long. It was actually, we had already decided to move at that point, and we were trying to figure out, okay, well, once we get down there, what are we going to do? And that's where, my wife's side of the family, she's had some of her uncles who have fixed up houses, not fix and flip, but just bought houses to fix up and live in and stuff, and all that. And so I kind of looked more into it. I wasn't privy on the actual fixing up myself, but then that kind of led me into the investing side of things. And I'm like, oh yeah.
So what got you interested in the real estate then?
Just it's the way investing in general. I think the real estate market is probably the best to get into for investing. As far as I know, it's the least volatile. So yeah.
No, for sure. I like it. Okay. And then, so before we met, what were some of the questions you had, things you struggled with, trying to get into real estate?
Everything.
Okay. Fair. Yeah.
I remember when we first started talking, you had me watch a couple of case studies, and one of your case studies kind of nailed it on the head with the situation that I was in, where I was doing a ton of research, and it was just, you can find everything you need to know on the internet, but it has everything that you need to know plus stuff that you don't need to know. So it's really hard to decipher what you actually need to know. So it was kind of like information overload, as your other student put it. And so, I got the general gist of the hard money lender aspect, private lender, all that, the investment side, finding contractors, all that. But I didn't know what I needed to know going into it. What do I start off with? How do I, get into it essentially?
Yeah, I think that's really important. A lot of people get into that over analysis paralysis mode. They're okay, YouTube videos and podcasts, all this stuff. And holy moly, there's so much. And, you try to get your first deal, there's 1,000 things running through your head. And then some the YouTube and the content out there, it's great, don't get me wrong, but it's really general and high level. And then it's okay, well, what about the details? I need the details. So I've heard that experience a ton. So then we connected. So you're in my program, the 6-figure house flipper. And then can you kind of detail your journey a little bit? Because I know you're looking at deals, kind of got close to a couple.
Yeah. So when I got into it, what was great about your course is that, you kind of have us go head first into it. And again, the biggest thing is you don't need to know the whole entire process getting into it. You figure you don't figure it. You tell us what to do along the way, so we don't need to know everything. Because I was worried about, I got to find contractors and stuff before I even start, looking at deals. But that wasn't the case. So I got into it. I started off with, in fact, it's only what I've done is the Facebook group post. It's great for getting leads. I haven't even touched cold calling yet, or list source or anything like that. But yeah, my first post, I got about 8 leads, if I remember right.
Nice.
One of them almost led to a really good deal. But it kind of got a little wonky because it was the property was under a trust. And so I wasn't talking directly to the person who controlled the property.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so unfortunately didn't get that one. Although I'm still going to try. I got to follow up. I still think it's a really good deal. But yeah, so then I just kept at it with the Facebook posts. I even had my wife help me, so she was also posting. And that led me to the current one that I'm in, where it was a guy who actually lives 20 minutes away from me, but he grew up in Oklahoma and he inherited it from his grandfather, and it was just a rental. So I looked into it, the numbers seemed right, and so I went for it.
Awesome. I do remember, now that you mentioned it, that's why I like to capture like the case studies and the milestones, because I do remember that first deal. I remember like you went out and I think you actually agreed to a price, but then like you weren't talking to the right person. And it was just the whole thing, but it was so close to being a deal.
So close. Yeah. And I did find out afterwards that they decided not to go with an investor and they wanted to fix it themselves.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I can't remember if I told you that or not.
I don't think you did.
But yeah, I followed up a couple weeks afterwards, and the lady that's currently living in it, who inherited it, she's like, I'm gonna fix this up myself, and and sell it. And so I'm like, okay, great, and then I have it in my calendar to follow up in a couple months to see where she's at. And who knows, maybe she got more stuff done with it but still isn't there yet and wants to sell it, and it might even be a better deal.
You just never know, especially like maybe she's like halfway through renovation on her own. She's like, hey, this is way too much hassle than I thought. So just the follow-up is really smart. And then there's the other deal. I don't know if you remember, it was like a little more rural, and like the numbers were there, but like the comps and ARV was kind of tricky. Do you remember that one? I think it was like 5 acres or 10 acres.
Oh yeah, I just couldn't find, because of the acreage, I couldn't get no one would give me a good ARV on it. So it was a wholesale deal, and the house was kind of half rehab. It was all drywalled and everything, so it required very minimal work. But I could not figure out what I could sell it for, and to me that was a little bit too risky. Yeah, so I had to pass on that one.
We passed on that one. Okay, but then you got this one. So it's, like you said, as a guy who lived kind of close to you, but it's in Oklahoma here, which is a couple hours away from you. Yeah. So what can you tell us? And whatever you're comfortable sharing, like what can you tell us about this deal? This deal that you bought.
All right. So again, it was a Facebook group post, and he described everything. He was very straight up. I didn't perceive that he was trying to, lie to me or anything. It needs just minimal work and stuff. It doesn't have an HVAC system, so it needs that. And so he told me what he wanted for it. So I did get an ARV on it, and it was way more than I expected it to be. So I kind of was like, kind of taking a risk, and I threw out an offer before I even saw the place. I know that's not the best thing to do, but I knew I had, an inspection contingency in the purchase agreement to fall back on if it came to it. So we agreed on, he was asking 55 for it, 55K. I offered 45K. My max allowable offer was actually 58K based on rehab numbers and stuff like that. So he's already asking under max allowable offer, which was great. And so he took the 45 right off the bat. I didn't really have to do any negotiating. And then we agreed on getting an inspector up there, and I made sure to go up there with the inspector to look at it. So we got up there, and that place was currently being rented out. And we got up there, and sure enough, the renters completely destroyed the place. Holes everywhere. There's barely any drywall left. Holes in the subfloor in the kitchen, just going straight to the ground. The fascia is rotting out. The roof had 4 layers of shingles on it. So way more work than I expected it to be. And believe it or not, based on, the coursework and what I learned about real estate stuff, I honestly wasn't worried about it because I knew I even had options while it was still under contract. I knew I had that contingency for the satisfactory inspection report. And I also figured, well, worst comes to worst, if it's still under contract, I can wholesale it off or, do something, I have options. So I wasn't too worried about it. So I notified the owner, and I found out that he had not been up there in 3 years. So he really had no idea what was going on. There was some shady stuff that the renters were doing behind the owner's back. So I met back up with the owner, and because now, my rehab budget went from 30 to 35K. Now it's about 70K worth of work. So we renegotiated purchase price of 25K. He kind of knew he had to kind of just get rid of it at that point. 25K was still under our max allowable offer. So I still have options, whether I go through with the rehab or do some other options in terms of like owner financing or just selling as is.
That's what I wanted to mention. Like, I know the number we said, like 25K, that's projected profit. That's if you want to go through with the full rehab. We have other options. We can do like an owner finance, maybe like a rent to own. We can do just like list it and see what happens. So you've got options on that place for sure. The biggest thing is like getting the tenant out. And I think there was something interesting if you're comfortable sharing like what the tenant was doing. Like the tenant was like taking pictures. The tenant was supposed to take care of the place.
Yeah.
Can you share that?
Okay, I wasn't sure if you want me to mention that or not. That's why I kind of skimmed
whatever.
over it.
Yeah, I think it's funny.
Yeah, so again, this is the reason why I had, without a doubt in my mind, the owner was telling me what he thought was the truth at the time. I had no thinking that, he's, trying to tell me the house is in great shape when it really wasn't. He knew it. Because when we were first negotiating that original price, we met up and talked before signing the purchase agreement. And he was saying that the tenant has a background in construction and was upkeeping the property, doing all the maintenance work. And what the tenant was doing was he would fix whatever needed to be fixed, and he would take pictures of it and then send receipts of the supplies that he bought to the owner. And then the owner would take that amount off of the rent. And so he was saying, he was submitting close to $200 of supplies every month in fixing the place. So again, that's kind of why I'm like, all right, well, they're fixing the place, they're upkeeping it. I'll go ahead with it. And then obviously once we found out that no, it's completely destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
I told the owner, and the owner reached out to the tenant, and apparently it was a pretty nasty conversation from what the owner told me.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially what happened is the tenant's buddy was, I'm not sure if he was rehabbing a house or building a house, and the tenant was buying the supplies for that, his buddy's house,
Mm-hmm.
and then taking really close up pictures so you couldn't tell it was, that house.
Somebody else's
And
house
then
that's getting
sending it.
renovated. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, once we found out, the tenant fessed up and he knew he had to go. So far we haven't had any issues with the tenants moving out.
Yeah.
But yeah, he knows.
Yeah. When you told me that, it's just blown me away. I've never heard of anyone doing that before. Like a tenant taking pictures of like another property, getting reimbursed for that renovation. Hey, I'm taking care of the place. And then the owner, it's partly on the owner though, no offense to him, because he hasn't been there in 3 years. Like if he went there every 3 months, it's a different story, or every year.
Yeah. And he did admit after the fact that he should have gone up there and checked on it every once in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, just kind of unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
The lengths that people will go through to shortchange.
That's a good way to put it. That's something else. I don't know what else to say to that. But okay, so the tenant's moving out, then you got your different options. We'll explore that once the guy's out. Your biggest focus, like, hey, let's get this guy out. And I've bought properties with tenants in there. It's no big deal. Just make sure the numbers work. Is for the people listening. It's the recommendation there. Anything else you learned like throughout this entire process?
Well, I mean, I learned a lot of stuff.
Fair. Okay.
But I also, it's really interesting where, this whole, even just this Oklahoma deal has led. One thing that, isn't taught, but it can happen, and it is happening to me, is you actually make some pretty good friends. And of all things, the owner of this property, really cool dude. And, after purchasing it, he still, he invited us over to his daughter's 1-year-old birthday party, and him and his wife. So his wife is friends with my wife, and we've even met up at the parks with our kids and stuff.
Yeah.
And still to this day.
So
it's actually been kind of cool. And so I've been talking about him through this whole situation. So he understands the route I'm taking. And, it's kind of cool because it's not conventional to the way that you think, oh, you buy the property and you never see the owner again. But
yeah,
sometimes it doesn't work out that way.
No, that's awesome. That's really good. I didn't know that. And that's always a positive. Like, you guys left it on a good foot. Like, you're not ripping him off. He's not ripping you off. Like, you guys are.
Yep. And then on top of that, the whole reason why he was selling the property was because he currently is trying to start. Well, he already started a dumpster rental business. And so he needed money to purchase another roll-off dumpster. So when we met up, we actually spent a good 2 hours, not even talking about the property or the house, but just business in general. Nice. And we even worked out a deal where, I gave him a whole stack of, my business cards that say, we buy houses, any condition, with my phone number on it and all that. And he goes to he does a lot of clean outs for houses that, the owner passed away and the children inherited it, and they just need to clean to get rid of it. And so he's actually been taking my business cards and sticking them in the doors and stuff like that. So it's kind of nice. And, and if anything leads to a deal, I'm more than happy to give him a kickback on that. So
I like it. I like it. Because sometimes people think like, it's a win-win. Like, if you're doing it properly, like, everyone's winning. Like, you can win, they can win, and everyone's helping each other out. So I really like that perspective. How do you feel about, because now you've done your first deal, like, how do you feel about like future deals? Like, has this motivated you and energized you? Or like, hey, I want to do more. Like, let's really get into this. Or has it been the opposite? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm honestly like I've been waiting well, since I purchased it the end of September. So the tenant has until the beginning of November to move out. And this whole entire time in the meantime, I'm just like, come on, I'm antsy. I want to start more into this. I need to invest. So
it's good. So it's motivated you. Yeah. Awesome. That's good. It's just going to build more momentum. Your next one's going to be easier than easier than easier. And it's like, okay, cool. Then you'll turn it, hit 6 figures. And that's pretty much it.
That's the goal.
That's it. Awesome. So that in mind, like, would you recommend others work with me as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. I love the way that your course was laid out. And as I said before, I love that you just, I'm a person that I have to learn by doing it. I can read all the stuff all day long, but it's not until I do it that I understand it. And now that I've gone through this first deal, it's definitely opened up a lot of doors for me and made myself more confident in, the way, that I negotiate with other people, the way that I network with other people, what I can and can't say in terms of real estate investing, when I'm talking with other wholesalers and other investors, and other potential leads.
I like it. It just makes you more confident. It's like, hey, I've done it once, I can do it again, type of thing. Yeah, awesome. And then, like, why should someone listening like take action now?
Well, as they say, the best time to buy a house was yesterday or the year before. So if you haven't gone into it, get into it while you can.
Yeah. Cool. Well, no, I do appreciate you hopping on here, like sharing your story, and the tenant thing like still cracks me up to this day, what they were doing, but that's yeah. But no, appreciate you hopping on here, appreciate you sharing this milestone. It's a big milestone. It's the most important one. If you hit it, you hit it. So congrats on that. Any final thoughts? Anything else you just wanted to share as we wrap up here?
I think I'm good. Yeah.
Cool. Well, appreciate you hopping on here, and yeah, until next time.
All righty.